Okay, now we should be live. The only thing that is missing is my audio check. So if the audio is working, please let me know. But in absence of that information, I'm just gonna quickly click myself on YouTube to check it for myself. Okay, at least I hear something already. And today I'm not going to be using this stylus, I'm going to be using this stylus. Here you can see how it looks like when I'm doing my palettes. I think in the OBS I'm having a weird window placement, so I'm just gonna reduce the size of my face so that you don't see so much of my face. Okay. This is working. So the brush that we are using today is fast tilting brush. I just want to like really quickly go over this, that if you go into your Gumroad purchases, and if you have already bought my oil set for Procreate, and if you go into this folder, I'm gonna turn off that as well. There are, every brush is as a single file also, in addition to the brush set. So you can go here and on the top you can see that there's a fine linen brush and fast tilting brush. These two brushes were just added to the set. So anybody who has bought this set, like, you now have these. You don't have to like input any codes or repurchase the set in any way. They are already in your product. You can just go on Gumroad and download those additional brushes. I will update the brush set file as well to include them, but at this point in time as I'm streaming this, you can only find them in the individual files folder where I just showed the location. Okay, I can hear myself pretty well, so I'm getting rid of these. And let's start doing some painting. So today I'm using fast tilting brush, and this, as of today, exactly is now part of the Angry Mikko oil set. You can see that I did a fancy sketch already for this, so that's the entire plan, and that's what we're gonna do now. If you remember, you can download this little bit of everything. Both of the brushes that I just mentioned are also in the membership downloads. So if you go on Discord and in the general chat, there's a link to the download folder where you can download these brushes and this color palette as well. So let's just start by putting in some like bigger blotches of color. And like in my previous video, I mentioned that here in the beginning, the first thing that I usually do is just play with the ratios of different colors and try to figure out what the painting is that way. Hi Silvinka. Make sure that this live stream is visible in a small scale on screen at all times, so I can just quickly check that. And make sure that I'm recording as well. The previous video that I just mentioned is kind of bombing, so I do need to make a new video as quickly as possible. But I have so many other things to do as well. Work has just been absolutely brutal in the past few days. Weeks, more like. I kind of like those gradient effects that I had out there. Having some grass in the foreground is always somewhat of a safe bet. And I'm trying to find the idea more precisely. What I had in mind when I did those lines is like some kind of a gate Just want to play with some sort of like more vibrant colors than in my last painting. The way that my creativity usually sort of like bounces back and forth between like two different modes is that whatever the tone of the previous painting is, it's pretty common. I've noticed that my creativity wants to do something like from the opposite end of the spectrum for the next painting most of the time. It just seems to go that way somehow quite often. I don't know if you felt this, that like, for example, when you're focusing on a theme, that after you have gone through, like, for example, if you have taken part in any of the 30-day art challenges that are out there, which are usually based on a theme, that after you are done with that theme, then you are either completely burnt out or that you are absolutely just craving to do something like completely different next. For me, I don't know why I'm wired this way, but my creativity seems to want to do something completely different after every single painting, which is obviously not great when you want to sort of like brand yourself and be one thing on the internet that the internet wants you to be. But my art doesn't seem to care about those sort of frivolous things such as marketing at all. Kind of like this idea of a very, very strong sunlight. Ever since I played Eco for the first time on PlayStation 2, I've had this sort of like desire to capture that like almost neon yellow radiant sunlight on grass that is just so overexposed that it's nearly blinding. I think that's the one look that I'm sort of always chasing in my art. Also, let me know if the music is too loud. Since currently I only hear my music, I don't hear my voice when I'm speaking. And hello, Rocket Sketch. So Rocket Sketch, in case you missed it, this color palette is now in the membership downloads. And also you can download this fast tilting brush and fine linen brush in the membership downloads as well. You can also get a bunch of different recent brush palettes that I've been using in these streams. I really should try and separate this gate. And to do that, I'm gonna use a different color, a selection color. Selection color is a color that I use when I'm trying to create a selection that requires finer controls than the selection tools allow me to have. And this way I can literally just paint in a selection. And then use the precision of painting tools to create a selection. So this red is completely on its own red layer. Does that look like a gate? I think that looks like a gate. Maybe a smaller door. I can just have like a spoonful of nature peeking through behind it to create that sort of like sense of mystery. When I'm teaching concept art, I think the hardest thing to teach to the students is always like, you should always paint in your environments something interesting that is not visible. Like basically try to paint a question, like not explanation, but almost like a cue for the viewers to think about what could be behind that corner, or what happens when this thing reaches that point, or this inevitable thing in motion reaches a certain point in the scenery. Like, these sort of elements are great when you are pitching a project, because that way you can easily sort of sell the project much easier when you are doing pitching to publishers and so on. Because then you can get the publishers to play that game and that experience in their head, and those answers that they are seeking for, they can only get when they are playing the game that they are funding. So that's a sneaky hack if you're an indie developer trying to get funding. But if you're explaining things, like, you can never really explain things in a way that is more interesting and personal than the people will like feel in their head. That's why I think it's important to look at your painting in a way and ask, like, what is the question that this is asking or presenting, or possibility? Try to give those sort of like interesting cues that are almost like a trigger to that adventure that everybody has in their head. They just need a little push to get that ball rolling. Now that this selection is done, I'm gonna just select this layer, and instead I'm gonna go on this layer, and then I'm gonna go into add, copy, and paste. And now I just have this layer, the selection, and I can get rid of my selection. I'm gonna alpha lock that, and then just focus on working on the distant elements now. Silvinka is saying, I have the same thing, but not every other painting. Maybe after 3 I want to change either the color or style. I'm gonna lower the volume a little bit. The thing with this brush is that if I tilt this a little bit, I can easily access those like very low opacity brush strokes, and that way it's sort of easy to find the mood by having very opaque brush strokes when you use it at 100% opacity, and then keeping the thing at 100% opacity like this. I am just tilting the stylus sideways a little bit, and that way I can access those sort of more streaky textured brush strokes when I want to mix the color and get these in-between tones to have a little bit more color harmony by keeping the colors almost the same but different at the same time. Just these micro nuances that add a little bit more depth to the color, so it's not just like one paint bucket fill, which can easily end up looking quite cheap. finding the right color in your scene is usually like one of the biggest things that you can do for your painting. But at the same time, it's important to keep looking at your painting with an eye that is like constantly on the lookout for changing color. You don't want any area to be just same throughout. My art teacher told me that like even in a portrait painting, the type of shadow color that you are using for hair on the forehead should be different than, for example, the shadow underneath the chin. And for big shadows like that one underneath the chin, like even that should have color that is changing. That you should never just be satisfied with like one mixture of color. And I think that has sort of like always remained with me. Even when I'm doing digital paintings, I'm still thinking about that and how I can find those little changes to the way that I am painting and depicting colors. Hello, Mike. Hello. In my last video, I added an optional soundtrack to the entire thing. And in that optional soundtrack, there's no voiceover at all. It's just the music that I mixed for that video. And today when I was on a run, I thought that since that optional soundtrack you can trigger by changing the audio to finish, because there's no such a tool in YouTube interface that you could just add custom sound to a video. You have to choose a language. So I thought that like nobody's gonna choose Finnish out of all things. So I thought that like maybe it could be funny to just have it be in Finnish language. So today on a run, I thought that like, what if in one of the videos where I don't show my face at all, if I do an optional soundtrack and then it's actually Finnish, like that I am just translating the entire video into Finnish and then just reading it in Finnish. Would anybody listen to that? Maybe it could be funny. Probably not worth the work, but just as an experiment to sort of show people like what this gibberish language sounds like that I am talking in my daily life. Some of the time. I mean, a whole lot of the things that I do are in English. Like, for example, when I was running, all of the podcasts that I listen to, they're all just in English. All of the TV programs that me and my boyfriend watch in the evenings, they are all just in English. The sound has to be really bad and hard to understand so that we put on subtitles at all. Thank you for having this channel and keep making your great teaching videos. I will. Thank you. Having said that, is there any like specific topic that you would like me to make video on next? I don't really have a specific topic for my next video yet, so if any of you in the chat have any good ideas, or just in general, like something that you are struggling with art currently, like let me know, and if there's something that I can do to help. Even if it's not the next video, just like having that in the back burner, like it helps, because sometimes a thought might occur to me later on, like this is how I could sort of help people that have this problem. Sometimes it can take a while, but I've been teaching art professionally for so long that it's usually like the same 30 different problems that people tend to have with their art. And I'm not saying that like everybody can have their art problems solved really easily, because the way to understanding, like the way to get over those, like to get that information in their head, like it varies greatly, because we all learn in different ways. And I think that even the same thing, when it's just worded in a certain way, can help greatly. I think the greatest example of this that I know of is that I have this color teaching method that I have used in my art classes for a really long time. And if you are in this channel's membership, there is like Master Your Color Palette stream where I explain and do that color assignment. In that explanation, I'm basically combining all of the different ways that I have noticed that like people understand that. Some people understand it through numbers, some people need to visually see me do the exercise myself so that they understand what it's about, or see someone else's swatchboard be checked for mistakes before they can understand, like, oh, these are mistakes, like this is how I'm supposed to be doing it. But everybody has like their own way of just having the way that they can find their way into understanding some of those core concepts. I'm gonna put this in front of the gate. This is behind the gate, right? Yes. So why are those clouds on it? Is it just because I haven't painted? Yeah, so I just didn't paint high enough. I'm looking for soft light and then warp tool. Just add a little bit more texture to it. I am going to turn off the saturation from this soft light. I'm gonna do one more. Flip it horizontally and then freeform transform it in place. Just because this sort of like texture variety is gonna take ages to do anyway, so whatever shortcuts that I can find to having that color and hue and value variety in a very small scale, I will just absolutely take no prisoners into getting this thing looking the way I want it to. Not just scumbling some erasing parts. Could be doing a painting with the zone palette be useful as a video. That is an amazing idea. I don't know, but I've been actually thinking about that very thing. It's funny that you mentioned it. So maybe I can say yes. I don't know if I can do it. I haven't done it, but maybe I should. Maybe I should. Maybe I should try. I have a portrait idea, but maybe that is not fitting for a Zorn palette because I'm thinking of like very specific colors for the portrait idea. But Zorn used the palette mostly for portraits, so maybe like it should still be that subject. I think that would make sense. I'm just gonna make sure that I didn't screw up the values by doing like one more layer, putting this all as a clipping mask, and then on this layer I'm gonna change this into luminosity. Okay, so I did darken it quite a bit, and this luminosity layer I'm just gonna crank down slightly, and then maybe do duplicate of that, and then put it at full opacity, add a black layer mask to it, and then paint with white to reveal it from the bottom part, and maybe here in the distance a little bit as well to tone down that contrast, and then do a Gaussian blur. And then just press all of these together, so I'm not gonna go into insane layer amounts right away. I could try one thing that I don't often do. I could like do foreground elements in big scale already at this phase, so later on it won't feel like I am covering up something that I've spent a whole lot of time working on. Like for example, if there's a part of the wall or grass or something that I'm just not gonna have like a huge amount of foreground elements completely covering up that stuff. Maybe here too, like there could be. Maybe another type of gate. Okay, and that sort of is already explaining the shadow in the foreground, I guess. So now we are looking up. Yeah. Does that make sense? Kind of. And then there will probably be some sort of like leaves here. I can do them better, but as long as I understand that they are here in the composition, and it's already giving me quite a lot of information where to go from here. Maybe another like bigger branch. Is it weird to sort of like work in this sort of like sandwiched area? I guess I've always done these at the last phase. Like I don't know if this is gonna work out because these are pretty big composition elements. I always feel like the composition elements that are overlapping with everything in the foreground, that I sort of like do them very carefully and try not to step on other elements. So maybe this way I can get a little bit more overlap going on. I don't know. We'll see, I guess. They are on their own layer, aren't they? Yes, they are. Oof. So if I don't like this, I can always get rid of them. Truth teller is saying, I always like to draw and paint, but I'm not so good at it because I didn't practice a lot. Yeah, I think the beginning can be very discouraging, like especially since your ideas are always going to be there. Like even when you start painting, you will still have great ideas, and then it's a lot more frustrating to paint and practice because you don't reach that like level of your ideas. It does make it super satisfying when you sort of start reaching and being able to tell those ideas to others. But I can relate to like feeling very frustrated and maybe a bit disappointed in how not fun the beginning practice part can be. But the truth is, when you practice and when you find a way to paint that is like more... When you find systems, I think that's the best way that I can say it. So when you have systems to sort of like somewhat on a consistent basis to do reliable results with your art, I think that's when it becomes way more rewarding. And when you start improving, it doesn't happen in this sort of like slow, gradual incline. Especially in the beginning, when the improvement does happen, when you have gone through that sort of dip, when you in the beginning think that you are the best painter ever to exist, and then you start actually practicing, and then you dip down into the valley of despair. When you start climbing up from there, you notice that the progress very much goes in these like huge steps that you figure out some sort of like fundamental aspect about art, and then you suddenly like all of these doors open up and you have so many more creative possibilities suddenly, and it just feels like incredibly exciting. But before you get there, it can feel like it's always going to be like this. I'm never going to like get those wins and feeling of satisfaction from putting all this work in, I understand that that can feel very like discouraging. But I also know for a fact that like when you do get better, like if you just soldier through that initial hurdle of art, it's so rewarding to go through those jumps. It's like you want to tell everybody about it, and then you just get addicted to painting because it provides those sort of like insane highs that pretty much nothing else can do. I don't know if that's motivating or not. Sorry if I just made it seem even more daunting. But you're not alone in that sort of feeling of frustration if that's what you're feeling. I felt incredibly frustrated. Especially when I went to one school where I met this like group of friends that I had at the time, and they were all doing character art, and they were all super into anime, or back then like anime wasn't really a thing. It was mostly like manga art. And I would also like try to do my character drawings, but I'm so bad at it. Especially since like they had so much like better skills than me at it. So I just felt like, oh, I'm not even, I shouldn't even be in this friend group because they are so clearly on a next level from me. So I just felt like a fraud all the time. But lo and behold, then I suddenly started doing characters, and I did that for ages and for different types of projects and games and stuff. So anything can happen if you just don't give up. And there's a question here. How would you suggest to get better at drawing with limited time? This is gonna sound like super boring, but I honestly would recommend practicing the fundamentals. Did I do a video on this channel about box rotations? I've done so many box rotations, and honestly, like there is a downside to box rotations. Like when you do too much of them, it can feel like this is just not fun. Like I'm not interested in doing this at all. But there's a way to progress from like doing art fundamentals to doing like very simple character designs. I don't know if there's like anybody in the chat currently who has done like the art fundamentals series on the membership when we did those sort of like box rotations, and then we went into 3D shapes and cutouts, and then simple character exercise. But I think at least to me, like when you can see the simple character exercise and do something like useful with that, I think at that point it feels like, okay, I can see how this connects to other forms of art, and now I actually have some skills to use this for something good, because just box rotations can seem very daunting. And for anybody wondering here, like what are box rotations in the first place? Box rotation exercise is basically taking a 3D box and then rotating it in perspective. And then you do that freehand and try to get it looking consistent, like to get the volume of the box looking consistent. And then there are several levels of like difficulty that you can add to that. Like for example, like do a notch in the box. I think in the box rotation exercises that we did on the membership, like I did one where there's a hole and then like additional part to the box, and then rotate that in perspective. It's just, to me it feels like doing a puzzle game. I'm not sure if it's fun, but it's fun in the same way that I enjoy doing puzzle games. And I know that puzzle games aren't everyone's thing, but to me, I love that sort of like visual problem solving. Like, for example, pixel art to me is like incredibly satisfying. Like, it's satisfying like in a way that other art isn't, because you're always trying to like figure out this one puzzle. Like, how do I use these limited blocks to illustrate this one idea or concept that I have in my head? And it never gets like boring, because there's always like so many ways to do it, and every time it seems like the tools are so limited that like, how can you do it? How can you possibly figure out a way? For example, I remember in one pixel art piece I had a trash can, and I wanted for some reason that trash can would have this bear head icon and the space was limited. I had only like a handful of pixels to work with to put in this idea, and just figuring out how to do those sort of things, I think is always super fun. But the same way with box rotations, like getting box rotations done in a way where it looks like the same complicated object in different orientations. I think that's its own like little game to me, because it's hard to find the same sort of like satisfaction that normal art gives me, that I'm not really expressing anything through it. That's why I think it's always important to find a way to turn like normal art fundamentals exercises into something where you are practicing like or your art and imagination skills at the same time. Because imagination and visual problem solving, they aren't something that automatically you have or you don't. I know that it's really hard and like somehow like sounds so mean to say to somebody that they haven't practiced their creative thinking, but it really is true. Like, when you practice like creative problem solving and creating like different environments and concepts, you do get better at it. Like, your mind starts making like bigger leaps and coming up with like more interesting non-cliche ideas. And then you can take people into like way more interesting places. So for example, if you want to do environments for video games, then you're not just doing like a basic generic ice level or lava level. You can go into way more specifics, like a lava level that used to be an power plant company, but then a horrible accident happened there, and now all of these toxins leaked into the atmosphere that created a chemical reaction with the type of soil that there is on the volcano walls, and that's why it's now full of these like turquoise glowing flowers and very interesting light situation because of it. Like, you can come up with like way more specific things that normal people, when they start thinking of like a lava environment, that they very much stop in the first step and then they don't take it further into a storytelling part. And those sort of environments are also very hard to sell if you don't have like way more specifics and a story to it, because when you go into specifics, then like when you explain those in a pitch meeting, it's much easier to sell that idea to somebody, not just with an illustration, but also the way that you explain it and what has happened there, because then you're storytelling, and it's much easier to buy a story than just a picture, because then you're also telling people that you also understand the rules and the origins of this world in a way that nobody else can, and you're the only person that can fill in those details. Now that you have them leaning in and listening to what you have to say, they think that you are the source of this story and they want to hear it from you and they want to hear you finish that story for them. The thing that I like about this brush is that like I can very easily go into these like very tiny details and fake all of this basically garbage detail in here to suggest lighting. But it's also very fast for those like fast blocking in moments. Silvinka is saying, from my life, I can't do portraits, but seeing a landscape or something else with that palette would be awesome. Okay. So maybe if I do a Tron palette video, Silvinka, maybe I should do 2 paintings. Maybe I should do a portrait and a landscape. I received like very scathing review to one of my videos that had multiple paintings in it, that they hate that there's like multiple paintings going on because it feels like distracting to the point that I was talking through. And honestly, I kind of like agree with their point that especially in that painting process, I didn't handle that aspect of it well. But maybe there's a way to structure a video to include 2 different ways of working. So that it's not taking away focus from each other. But if I, for example, structure the video that they are sort of like sectioned off into their own parts, like for example, start with a portrait piece and then end with a landscape, or the other way around. I don't know, sometimes when you end up chasing to like trying to please everybody on YouTube, you sometimes end up doing nothing at all. So hard to understand what people want. And then when a video does well, like sometimes it can be just completely random. It might seem easy from the outside, as like this stuff is successful, just do that. But then when you try to do a video with the same theme or structure, it can still kind of completely fall like a rock into the sea of YouTube content. This music is weird, but I kind of like it for this, because I don't know what this entire painting is about, so it's sort of like I'm discovering it myself. that great challenge day. What is a challenge day? Like doing a painting, I guess. And Andrew, good Sunday to you as well. Or Saturday? Saturday. Okay, I should sort of figure out what this gate is. And I kind of hate doing this sort of like visual elements, but now I'm trying to think, because I do have perspective guide here that is somewhat aligning with these lines that I have going on right now. So now I'm gonna go into edit drawing guide and then go into symmetry. And I'm gonna just try and figure out a gate architecture in line art form, I guess. Or as a painting. Maybe as a painting. I'm gonna turn on the assisted drawing on. And then just try to lock in that shape. No. Wrong layer, abort. I take back everything that I just did. Sorry. Parfatsi is saying, "Hey Mikko, I hope you never stop doing your art." I hope I never stop doing my art either. I kind of have no other like redeeming qualities as a person or skills in life, so I don't know what the plan B would be if this art thing doesn't work for me. I guess I'm like okay with video editing. Does anybody want to hire me for that? Because I might say yes. Sometimes I do think that like maybe it would be just so much easier if I had just like a normal day job to pay the bills, and then I could still work on the YouTube channel, but more as like a side hustle / hobby, so that there wouldn't be so much pressure for me to make money doing this, which sometimes can feel like a little bit like high pressure, I'm not gonna lie. And then when you have like commissions or projects that you are hired to work on, it's so hard to sort of like keep to your previous commissions, and especially like multitasking all of those things at the same volume at the same time. So it can easily feel like you're failing at multiple things when you are trying to just like keep all the plates spinning. I love music like this. I don't understand like how we as a society haven't figured out that there's so many like interesting musical cultures out in the world, and we only listen to this like one type of music and choose to kind of be in this monoculture out of our own free will, when there are so many like beautiful options out there in the world. Like for example, like I don't know if you've ever heard Bulgarian throat singing choirs. Like all of that stuff is just always insanely inspiring to me when I listen to it, and I can only hear it when I search for it. I know that I'm like fully an old man yelling at the clouds by saying this, but just today I said to my boyfriend that like I think today pop music, and I know that people have complained about pop music for all eternity, but I feel like especially now when you hear like a little bit of like 15-second clip of a song, that's the entire song. Like there are no more like interesting outros or long intros of like a build up to a song, because it's so important to sell the song like in the first 3 notes now. Otherwise you're not gonna get recognized or radio play. And there are no bridges anymore to songs either. It's just like that one thing and then it ends. And then music is also like reduced to like 3 minutes now, which is so limiting. This concludes my old man is yelling at clouds rant. I promise. Damn, it's so hot in here, like you guys would not believe. Okay, I think this is the gate. I'm pretty confident that this is the gate. Should I do a duplication of this gate in a smaller scale to sort of like take detail? Maybe I can do that like after it's in perspective. So I'm gonna do a duplication now. Then let me think. Go into wrench icon, canvas, edit drawing guide, and then I'm gonna put the perspective grid back on. And now using this perspective grid, I'm gonna skew this into place. Let's just see. Canvas is as big as possible so that I can see what I'm doing. I go into freeform transform, long press these edges to grab them into place. At this point, as I'm pulling this into place, I just want to like quickly remind everybody that if you have bought my Angry Mikko oil brushes set, that this brush that is in the title of this video and the other linen canvas brush, they are now added to the product that you have already paid for. So you can just go into your Gumroad library, find that product, and there you will find in the individual files, the first two are the new brushes. What am I doing? Where is the gate even? Is it here? I guess now I can just design where it is by doing this. Maybe that's good. I just don't want it to like seem like it's skewed too much. And then make sure that it's touching the ground. Okay, I think that could be it. I always have to copy if I'm not satisfied with this. So with the depth, I thought that maybe I could push another one into the direction of those perspective lines here-ish, and then just drop a fill color on it in low contrast. So I'm just gonna grab a shadow color there, drop it on there, and put it into low opacity. So I have some of that variety, and then just do that. The perspective drawing assist is still on. Maybe I can use it to just do a few stone blocks that are hinting at this same perspective. If you think about how these sort of like decorative elements are built, then you would have the smallest bricks closest to the ornament parts, and then have huger like boulders when you just need volume for the wall. thank you about my video editing skills. Sometimes I feel like I think there is like value in doing less with the video editing and then just letting the paint process be there. Because personally, like when I'm looking at like art videos, there's part of me that like appreciates that sort of like lack of visual noise when I'm looking at it. I think that's the best way that I can maybe describe it. Like, when you just focus on video editing and do so much with it, then I think it can like easily get the point lost in there that you are trying to make. Sure, you can maybe hold retention better, but maybe as an art teacher, like I'm always trying to evaluate as well, like, are people actually learning the thing that I'm trying to get across here? Sometimes retention can be good when you can make people listen and pay attention to the video. I think those drawing guide lines are kind of a distraction to me right now. So I'm gonna put them in a lower opacity. So if I squint, I can kind of still see them, but they are not distracting me from like seeing the colors for what they are. To trying to divide this part in the painting into brushstroke groups so that the different elements of detail have their own neat little sections where they can do their own little thing. And having these vines kind of like cascading on top of this gate can take away some of that monotonous symmetry that I just did, which is not interesting. And by breaking it apart with these different growth patterns and hiding parts of it, and I can make it not symmetrical anymore, and thus hopefully a little bit more interesting. I had a very slow run today because in my run program there was a 17-kilometer run, and I have promised my boyfriend that I'm gonna go cycling with him tomorrow, and I'm not in a great like bike fitness currently. I've used my new bike like once, so he promised me that he will slow down to my maximum speed. So, because I know that for him it's frustrating to go at my speed because I'm not that fast with the bike as he is. He's just insane cyclist. I will just block in this light now and maybe come back for details later if this makes sense at all. I want to get to the part of the gate where that light is sort of cascading on those three-dimensional elements as well to make them seem more interesting. I'm doing a new layer, and for this I want to have the assisted painting on to do brush strokes in perspective. And here I just want to do like some parts where the light is hitting these elements. And then maybe also some sort of like highlight that is colder color, maybe more desaturated here on this side. I have all of these like random colors. That's why I named it a little bit of everything. I thought that these could be like fun, like tiny specks of color that could be flowers or something. Those are usually things that I do last in the painting because they just make me feel better about the whole thing. But I'm just gonna do a few now, a few sprinkles, because I need them. I don't hate this painting. I think there's like something developing, but the way that I'm constructing it with these sort of like tiny little elements at a time, I know that it might take quite a while before I reach that level where I'm just feel like I'm in there. I don't quite feel that, so I need sprinkles. Don't judge me. Then some of that orange as well. I think they're fun. This definitely needs a bush in the foreground as well. I feel like there's just too much of that wall. I'm gonna do it on this layer because they are not touching anyway, so I don't wanna build up an insane layer structure. Hello, Chinchilla. I remember that name. I know that it's very difficult for me to say your names or read your names out loud, and I often end up butchering them, for which I am very sorry. But the upside of all of this horror is that it does make it easier for me to remember anybody who has been in these live streams before. And I don't know, I just think it's like fun to see the same guys appearing. Like, that's one of those things that makes me feel like there's this like art group that gathers for these streams, which to me is just fun. I was just like thinking about this today when I was running, that are there any like free running groups? Like, why does everything have to be paid? Like, even these like simple hobbies that people have. And then I thought that like maybe like my art streams are kind of like that thing that I can do when I invite other people into these sessions, and hopefully some of you are doing your own art or something creative at the same time. So you can like arrange things to be fun and free. If you put just a little bit of effort into it, because I would probably be painting here anyway. So like this way I get to do it with you guys, and hopefully some of you are able to like get your own art done at the same time. I feel like I need one more tree up there, but I'm absolutely not doing this scumbling that is taking forever. Like one more time, I'm gonna be just like super cheap with it. Not as a clipping mask, but as a new layer. Okay. Does this look different enough? I'm gonna say it's okay. Recently in my live streams, I tried to zoom in a little bit less, and it has just made the process of painting and planning the composition so much easier for me. And I have to say that even though this is not something that you ever need to worry about. But for me, when I'm doing my video editing, it's so much easier to edit a video when I'm not zooming in constantly to different parts of the painting, because then when I'm speeding it up like 300-400 times, having this sort of like constant zooming in and out, it can make it seem like obnoxiously nauseating. Not just for you, but for me, that having to watch through like hours and hours of that footage when I'm editing it, it's just constant zooming in and out. Not great stuff to edit. And obviously, not fun for anybody to watch either. Can I reward myself with some highlights now? I think I was really patient with that part. I consider myself part of your art group. You are part of my art group. Somebody's saying nice color. You can get this color palette like not by just being a member, but you can actually just screenshot it right now. I'm gonna keep that on for 3 more seconds. I'm trying to find a color for these trees or branches. So I think this is the foliage layer. So I'm gonna do a layer on top of that. And then going to color, reduce the saturation. I think I'm gonna bring it a little closer to yellow. And then just go down in saturation quite a bit. And maybe this is it. This already looks brown to me, so that's a good start. Remember, it's green. Sometimes instead of like painting foliage over, these sort of branches, if they are far off in the distance and they aren't that important to the composition, You can just do a layer mask, choose black, and then just paint in leaves, which means that you are erasing those. So this sort of like suggests that there's foliage, especially in the upper part, breaking up those lines. They still have their inner logic in between there, but this way I'm sort of like scumbling the individual sticks into just this detail mess. And if you want to, like, this is 100% optional, but you can do like few secondary level highlights. That's slightly more depth. But this is honestly, it's just fully dependent on where that is, that tree in relation to your camera, and what kind of level of detail do you actually even need there. This is just to add a little bit more visual variety. Truth teller is saying, I'm painting too, something else, it feels nice. And your painting is getting really nice, thank you. Also a big fan of Procreate, it's a great program. I think Procreate is simple. I think that's what I like most about it. I think especially for anybody who is learning art, like, it can be very deceptive to look at like comparisons of different types of art programs. And then I always say to my art students that Photoshop is the worst program to start learning art on, just because it has so many tools that it gives this impression that all of those tools are important to learn and master somehow, and that all of that energy is the time taken away from learning those fundamentals, doing box rotations, learning color theory, implementing that color theory, learning mood, and thinking of interesting designs that make your audience think about the worlds and characters that you are creating. Like, those are the important things. And the more tools and the different types of like widgets the art program has, it doesn't make it better. It just makes it harder to learn when you have all of this information overload fighting against you on those things. And then the more you do art, the more you learn that all art applications are the same application. You do art exactly the same way on each one of those. Art hasn't changed in hundreds of years. how you do it and what the main composition rules and so on are. All of that stuff is still the same. Somebody suggested me in the last live stream, I think, that I should try heavy paint, and now I can say that I have. It's not a bad program. I think it's fine, honestly. And I do mean fine, like in a positive way, like not in a negative way. But it was also quite glitchy. So I think that's my negative aspect of it. That sometimes the brush cursor would go off from where I was touching the screen, and I had to completely close it and open it again, which is not like a big deal. But if I was under a deadline, running into those sort of like issues would eventually cause me to be quite frustrated when I need to get some real work done. Some of the brush controls are nice. My one concern with the brush styles is that they end up dictating the look of the paintings quite a lot. So a painting can sort of like look like it's done in heavy paint. And I think that's kind of dangerous area for me when it comes to art programs, because I like to be the one that dictates the look of a painting, not the art program itself. I think the waterfalls need a little bit of light as well. And go into the highlight color. Just break out that. Siri Chinchilla is saying, I'm editing photos for a client, not as a creative, but I noticed I'm in a similar flow as with painting. I think editing is creative, isn't it? I mean, for me, like when I'm editing my paintings, like that to me is always like, that's never not fun. There's never a moment when I have a finished painting done that I need to do color editing for, that I'm like, oh, I need to do the color edit. Like, I'm always 100% of the time like, yes, finally, I get to do the color editing. That's just always like the funnest part of the entire painting process. Hello, Evil Hunter. I'm gonna add a little bit of light and take away some of that saturation when I'm doing these sort of like distant highlights. Maybe that went a little bit overboard. I can always rein it in by putting this at a lower opacity. So that it creates less contrast, and maybe duplicating that and then doing a Gaussian blur for this so that those things seem like a little bit further away. I think this could also be slightly less saturated. For these trees, I'm doing like a blotch of light at first, and then going in with the details, because this way I can sort of maintain the shape of the tree easier than going in with individual foliage parts right in the beginning. I think Jose Colomer is saying master, but I think mastery is kind of overrated, honestly. I think everybody's sort of like looking for mastery in whatever they are practicing, but in that seek for mastery, I think people often lose the joy of like, why are they doing the thing in the first place? They do it because they love it, and that in the journey, like maybe to some sort of like a hypothetical mastery, I just remember to like be proud of the works that you are creating already while you are practicing, because that is literally your life's work. I never want to get into a state where I feel like I'm not good enough in doing this or that. I'm still practicing, and then maybe someday I will be an artist or somebody that people will look up to as a master of something. If I spend my time on this earth that way, I will miss being present for all of the paintings that I am already creating and feeling like proud and happy that I am making those. So while I am grateful for that great compliment, I just can't help thinking that maybe this way of thinking can sometimes be a little bit toxic. I mean, sure, when you're making art, you're gonna practice and improve all of the time in various different ways. That is a given, and that's one of the like the rewarding aspects about making art as well. But to me, the works that you create, like those are the reason, not the skill to keep going. Like in the beginning, when you are doing these sort of like fundamental art practice things, like you do have to sort of like submit to like some level of tedium in that pursuit, that it's not always going to be fun to figure out how to rotate a complicated looking box. A big part of practicing art and getting better at it is by doing actual art that already has value. I think especially the sort of like art groups that are out there, and I'm gonna say like especially on YouTube, there's so much this sort of like self-hatred that is sort of pushed upon us, that we are supposed to feel bad about all of our art skills all the time. And I just don't think that's a way to get anywhere. Like you kind of have to enjoy art to do more of it and to get better at it. I mean, if you just go into this sort of like self-lashing about all of the things that you are currently not able to do, then it's gonna feel bad. Like it's gonna make you feel bad about yourself all the time. And nobody else is looking at your art that way. They're thinking of all the things that you are currently lacking. Everybody else is looking at your art as this sort of like incredible source of beauty and wonder. Let's just erase all of that. I did. I think I accidentally went into an eraser tool or something. Henlim is asking, did you ever have a fear of sharing your art online, and how did you get over it? You probably know what I'm going to say. So you get over that fear by sharing your art online. I have these things, like these pillars of motivation that I always remind myself whenever I'm like low on motivation for creating art or working in general. I always say to myself these things. Nobody cares about your art. The art that you're posting online, absolutely. Like, you have to fight hard for people to care at all about your art. It doesn't happen by itself. It's like women when they say that, like, I don't want to go to the gym because I don't want to grow big muscles. And then, like, that's completely ignoring the fact that you have to put so much time and energy into diet and like routine and technique and pushing yourself like incredibly hard. Like, nobody goes to the gym and then just suddenly has like huge massive muscles and they can't fit into a dress anymore. Like, that just doesn't happen. So I tell myself nobody cares about my art, and then nobody's coming to rescue you. So whatever problem you are having, you're an adult, everything is figure outable. And there is like, you can have these moments of despair when something feels hopeless, like when something breaks that is beyond your skill level to fix. But everything is figure outable. There are instructions online for anything. If you want to learn art, you can sign up for a class, you can find tutorials online. I have plenty of free tutorials. I have an online art course for teaching the way that I paint, and my checklist method. Like, everything is, you can just figure out everything by finding out. But if you're feeling hopeless, I just tell myself that nobody's coming to rescue me. There are no troops on the way. If I feel I'm lacking motivation on a long run, like for example today when I was dropped off in the middle of nowhere and the way to get back to this house was by running here, nobody was coming to rescue me. So that's the way that I motivate myself with art as well. Nobody's coming. That to me is incredibly hopeful. And if none of those things help with motivation, I always tell myself that I'm dying. Like, you are literally dying, and this is your one life to get that stuff done. So do it or don't do it. But don't not do it and complain about it. Like, you can choose that, like, this is not a priority. This is not something that I value enough to put effort and my own bravery into. You can choose that. I never wanna, like, I don't never wanna run a marathon. Like, it's not that important that I would put months of training for a goal, because like it's just not that important for me. That's fine. At least you are being truthful with yourself at that point. So when it comes to posting your art online, if it's a priority and you do it, you will very quickly notice that you're not suddenly gonna blow up or have like this ton of negative attention pointed towards you, because you have to work really hard to get anybody to notice that your art even exists online, especially these days with the whole enshittification of social media. Like, you have to basically dance in TikTok videos or like take your clothes off or whatever it is that people do these days to get attention. Clearly, I haven't figured that out with short videos, so I'm in no position to give advice on this. But I guess I would start with like the bare minimum. Just put your art out there and be amazed by the small amount of impact that it has in anybody else's life. But it does have a huge impact on your own bravery as you keep doing it. At some point, it's not gonna feel that scary. And when you have built up that sort of like, grinded through that valley of cringe in the beginning, when it feels like, oh, I'm not good at this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. By the way, nobody is starting up running as a hobby and screaming to people on the other side of the street that like, I'm just doing this as a hobby, I'm not good at this. Nobody cares. The same thing with art. You can practice something on your own, even when you're doing it in public, and it's fine. You don't need to keep apologizing for existing. Everybody has the same right to create. And when it finally starts, and it will, starts feeling easier, because you will learn that nobody cares that much, then at that point, I would implore you to take on the second step of this challenge. And that is posting art that is personal, something that says something about you. And the way that I always advise my students to do this is start naming your art. Every single painting that you do, give it a name. It deserves a name. And forcing yourself to jump through this hoop with every one of your paintings also builds up that emotional bravery when you are painting your art. You will go through the same process of learning, oh, actually nobody cares that much, not just about your art, but like, unfortunately, you as well, like, you have to work really hard to make people care. And the only way that you can reach out to other people is by like starting first. Like, you can't make friends without like asking for it. You have to ask for people's time and attention, to pay attention to you and how you are feeling. And you can't make connections and learn about the people that are seeing your art if you're not willing to sort of open up about yourself. And that happens through your art. And when you're giving each one of your paintings a name, you're also teaching yourself that your art, like in its current form, the way that it is now, already has value. Not when you are a master at whatever it is that you are practicing in art, but right now, the things that you are currently feeling, you are able to make those artworks only now. Let's say that hypothetically, in 30 years, if you have consistently kept doing art and you are amazingly good at it, like so good that like all of us here will be just absolutely amazed by whatever it is that you paint or draw. In 30 years, you're not going to have this life situation, like these experiences. You wouldn't be painting those paintings that you are doing today. So now is the only moment that you can tell about your life as it is happening right now. Not just for us who are following and seeing your art online, but for yourself as well. And I wouldn't dismiss that value, because you should always care about your art. It might be really hard to make other people care about your art. That can only happen through like consistent work. But you shouldn't have to work in caring about your own art. You should always care about your own art. Otherwise, like, you won't put enough effort into it to make it into anything worthwhile. Not for others, but yourself as well. So whenever my students complain to me that they don't have motivation, how do I have motivation? I just tell them, nobody cares about your art, nobody's coming to save you, and you're dying. Pep talk over. Hope that helps. Because that's all they're getting. Feels like a game scene to me too. Yes. That's you watching somebody who has done concept art for a decade. Are any of you guys like watching the game announcements? Like, for example, just last night there was a Summer Game Fest. I watched it just this morning. And then there was Sony State of Play earlier. I have so many opinions about the new God of War. I mean, I'm just gonna let you have it because there's no elsewhere for me to put these feelings. When I saw that trailer, I'm not the type of person who is easily or like cares about graphics at all. I really do not. I cannot underline enough how I don't care about the graphics of games. I only care about the visuals of games and the visual design of them, because I think that's something that lasts the test of time. But for me, when I saw the new God of War trailer, I was just like, absolutely, my jaw was on the floor looking at the hair of the main character. It is just so amazing. Like, truly. It's never seen anything like that before. And the way that it catches light and moves and has these like individual strands of hair, it's just technical marvel, honestly, that is happening with real-time rendering. Insane. But having said that, like, it would be so easy to just say that, like, I love the look of the main character so much, I am so excited that there's this sort of like new take on what God of War games can be. But then when the main character gets out of that tunnel into this afterlife of the gods, it just looks like an absolute mess. Like, visually, like, it looks so bad. Like, the graphics, great. Visual design, just absolute, like, dog's dinner of, like, completely random concepts that have absolutely no cohesion whatsoever. And there's so much potential in like the afterlife of gods, of like what that could be, but apparently what that could be for them is absolutely everything at once. It's just like, to me, it's just, oh, looks so bad that it's painful to watch. Hopefully that's only one area of the game, but as a concept artist who has done a lot of environments, when I saw that I was just like, eesh. To go from such highs of being impressed with the hair to just like the absolute lows of the environment. I think especially the first God of War on PlayStation 2, like the environment design like still holds up. Like it's so imaginative, and having this entire game be in like one location with so much variety, and it's just also a technical marvel in how they were able to do it, to depict that like level of scale in that game. So not envious of the challenges that the entire team had in front of them, because like they are always competing with the incredibly high bar that the past games from PlayStation 2 era have set for themselves. But I don't know, it would be interesting to know what David Jaffe, the director of the first one, would think of the look of that. I know that the creator of God of War is a huge Hideki Kamiya fan, and he was inspired by Hideki Kamiya's first Devil May Cry when they made the first God of War. So he would probably like the new combat system, being closer to the original game and his vision of this Western style spectacle fighting. Mikko, did you ever try Witcher? Not yet. But Witcher 3 is getting a DLC, so I guess it's technically not done yet. So maybe when the new DLC drops, I have it on Steam Deck, so maybe then I will try it. Winston Smithen is saying that painting makes me feel the old Zelda games for Super Nintendo. Yes! Oh. That's such a good idea. I think it would be like a cool art challenge to take maybe a SNES game or Game Boy Color Zelda game and try to sort of like reimagine like what that would look like. I'm excited to see like what the next Zelda game is going to look like, but at the same time, I kind of fear with this like new way that Nintendo is making their games and the sort of caution that they are now showing for their Zelda franchise, especially after the way that is it Link Between Worlds was received, that they are sort of afraid to experiment with art style the same way that they used to be. In the past, it was sort of given that like when a new Zelda game comes, that it would always have its like completely new look, and they were free to create whatever fits the narrative and the tone of the story. But now I feel like if they deviate too much from the look that Breath of the Wild has established for the Zelda franchise now, then people would probably like easily reject it. So I hope that they don't feel this pressure, but I'm sort of afraid that they will stick quite closely to what Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild have done, which are like obviously insanely successful art style. I'm not saying that's the worst thing to happen, of course, but as a creative person, I kind of want them to like be free to make something that like would even upset me. Like I would be fine with that. I'm a child of the 80s, so when I was growing up, everything was like made for me, like from scratch. Like there weren't like franchises or IPs that people were just milking endlessly. There weren't 15,000 Spider-Man movies that I still fail to care about at all. All of the movies were the first time that those things were being done. Ridley Scott's Alien and Back to the Future, like they weren't just numbers in franchises. They were made for the first time. I think Itarider Kings, I think that opinion is pretty much like universally shared by absolutely everybody. So I don't know if we have that much to worry, honestly. It seems like even the younger generation is just universally like, no, we don't want any of this. Thanks, but no thanks. I don't know if the message is going through, but it's a consistent message. Make a game that upsets me reminds me of the book Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow. That's quite a name. I think Rei Kawakubo, the famous fashion designer, said it best when he said, fashion has to have an element of upset. So if nobody is upset by it, it's not fashion. Then it's just clothes. Good evening, Bargain Belt. Anyway, beyond this sort of like super big houses announcing different video games, to me, I think the most interesting was Thinky Direct, where it's an hour of just like completely new puzzle games. And a lot of them are coming quite soon to Steam, so that's also exciting that you don't have to wait years and years for them. I just love puzzle games. I think it's the one genre that like doesn't feel like it's that stressful for me, especially if I have a lot going on. I love playing like puzzle games before going to bed. Currently I'm playing Pokemon Fire Red, and I am in the champion road, so I know that I'm quite close to the end in that. And that game really makes me want to do more pixel art. It's just like has so amazing pixel art, like all these inventions with the limitations, that there are so many moments fire red, where they are communicating as like a simple visual thing, like a material or light source, through the way that the outlines have different tints of color in them. And every time I see that sort of clever stuff, I'm always like, oh, I want to do pixel art again. It just looks so much fun, and I don't want everybody else to be having all of this fun without me. There's so many layers here that I think it's just confusing, so I'm just gonna crunch down everything into one single layer, except this one. This one can go behind, I guess. Is it something that I need? No? Yikes. Now I'm completely confused what I was trying to do. This shadow goes on this thing, and then I'm gonna need this extra material here. Okay. I'm doing a duplication to add a little bit of hue variety, so I'm going into hue and saturation, cranking down some of that saturation, adding a bit of brightness. And then on a black layer mask, I'm just scratching in bits and pieces of this wall to give it a bit more texture. I know that this is a very subtle effect, but in a finished painting, it just makes the surface a little bit more interesting. Also, when you're doing tons and tons of decisions when you're painting, decisions really cause that sort of fatigue in the process, because they always require you to work with your entire shoulders, like just having that tension being built up, especially when I'm painting people and then estimating the proportions all the time. Like, to me, that's incredibly stressful, because the amount of decisions that you have to keep making, it's just non-stop. So having these sort of like texturing parts that you can go in and release a little bit of that tension, it can bring this self-soothing element into the process, that you can resume the hardest parts again, and you have made something that is sort of like lower stress level type of working. And I'm not saying that like all of these elements should be stressful for you, but like whatever that element in your art process is that causes you to build up that sort of decision fatigue over time, just be aware that you need to find your own way of like self-soothing through the process. Because art isn't supposed to be a battle all the time. You have to find ways to make it fun as well. did a hue variation, and then I'm scratching in some of those dabs of color. It's almost the same color, just slight variance of it. And this is basically doing the same thing, just making it look slightly more interesting. Do you know the app Big Square? I think I have it. I also have Pixaki, which I think is a pretty good pixel art application. I think you can do animation in Pixaki as well, and the animation system is pretty simple and easy to iterate on. What is that green blob? Is it just this? Oh my god. Okay, I need to clean this up. This looks like a mess. Yeesh. Okay. I need to also fill in those holes. Because this element behind this is going to be so bright, I don't want it to peek through these walls. An easy way to check these sort of elements is also going into the background layer color and then setting a crazy color for it, like something like neon purple or pink, and then when you zoom in, you can more easily see where it's peeking through. How perfect is this music for this painting? I mean, it's almost like a soundtrack for what's happening here. One thing that is annoying me about that vignette 3 sketch in, that it's kind of getting thicker over here when it's going upwards, which technically sometimes can happen in nature. It's just in a painting, it tends to always look unnatural. So I'm doing a like small tree liposuction from this fat element up here. It's okay for this tree to be chunky, but as an artist of this painting, I just want to make it chunky in the exact right way that is okay with me. I need to check that big square. Is it a paid app? I think that's one of the things that like made me kind of bounce off of Heavy Paint so quickly, is that I noticed that they have some kind of like a subscription model just for storing the files, and I was like, no, I absolutely cannot afford that. I think you pay once for big square. Okay. That sounds way more reasonable. Different skins for an art program sounds super fun. Which artists do you follow or are an inspiration to you today? Well, I don't know what videos they have released recently, but like Robin Klontz on YouTube has been like a big reason why I started YouTube in the first place. I love their videos. Also, like, I don't know these people, like, honestly. I wish that we were friends. But just very influential people that way, because I used to watch their videos and think that like, oh, I wish that I had a YouTube channel, like that looks really fun. And then also Fran Nerd, big reason why this entire YouTube channel exists. I follow a lot of artists, but you asked which are an inspiration to you today. Like the artists that I follow, like I don't want to make art that they make. Like they are already doing that stuff. So I don't look at their art and think that like, I wish that I was doing that stuff. No, I like know my own strengths and weaknesses pretty well at this point. So I have no interest in like taking their space in what they're doing. Like for example, Brian Summer is amazing with his characters. They're so beautiful. Not only could I never do that, but also like what's the point when he exists and he can do that stuff so much better than I ever could. I've also always been a huge fan of Yoshitaka Amano. More so back when I was doing watercolor paintings. But I guess like the way that I do ink drawings, even today, like I wouldn't have learned how to use Sumi-E brush with ink if it wasn't for Yoshitaka Amano. I think that's fair. I'm trying to think because there are so many artists that I love. I guess like my influences when I was younger, like I used to be like back when I was in the army, I was just like a huge fan of Hyung Tae Kim, and I just saw a trailer for a new game that his studio is making, which is a Stellar Blade sequel. But I think that like now there's so much attention on like how booby and scandalous the character designs are, that like how amazing artist Hyung Tae Kim like really is. And I think like all of that like skill that he has, it somehow gets buried under this like sex appeal of his characters now, especially the sex appeal of his female characters. But I think he's one of these people who like always wanted to make like all of the characters sexy. It's, for example, like his work that he did for NC Soft, like the male characters are just as hot and on purpose. So I really don't think that like making characters sexy is sexist by itself. It's just if you like do only sexy female characters in a whole game, like it just looks like, okay, what is this? So I think it's a shame that we don't get to see his character artwork anymore because he's so good at it. Like he really is. Like all of the work that he has done for War of the Genesis games back in the day, those were never released outside of South Korea. But just amazing. I have War of the Genesis art book, by the way. Yes, I was in the army. Was it Norway's army? No, it was Finland's army, obviously. I'm texturing only the edge of this light, and I think that way I can fake way more detail than by doing the entire area with foliage textures. I think there are also like plenty of gay artists that I really love, but that's also like a genre of art that I don't know if I have that much to add to it. Like other people are already doing like way better. I sometimes feel like the thing that I don't like, or I think is missing from gay art, is like it's just like hot dudes, and I get the appeal of obviously doing that. But just like having like wider range of like human experience, I think could be interesting. Unfortunately, I just don't think I'm the person to do it. I love my landscapes too much at this moment. But when Pride happens, like sometimes I feel like I'm not like really part of this group, because I can't really claim myself to be like a queer artist, because I don't think like my art is gay enough. But back when I was like doing video games, sometimes I would like, even when doing an environment design, I had so much like internalized homophobia that I would think like, will the other developers think that this is a too gay landscape? Like, am I using too bright colors? Like, is it too vibrant and happy? Like, because one way to sort of like mask yourself as like more straight is by doing monochrome science fiction violent crap. Which I also have done, and I am not especially proud of that. Tired Finnish Dad is saying, I always smile a little on the fact how strange army service is for most of the world, but such a it just is thing for us Finns. Yes. I think it's also one of those things that like when you're sort of like forced to live with such completely different types of people that you would in no other circumstance be associated with in real world, that I think it sort of like builds like certain kind of life experience to deal with different kinds of people, and just like basic empathy of like understanding how different people can be. I'm not saying that everybody should go to army. I'm definitely not the person to deliver that message. But like maybe having like moments in your life when you're sort of like put into a situation where you are just like living with a group of different kinds of people that come from different circumstances. I think that can be a good growth experience to anybody. I'm trying not to say that thing that I think like, really hard. Okay. I can't. Like, I can't censor myself. Like, to me, I think the biggest learning experience that honestly boosted my self-confidence quite a bit in the army is understanding, like, just how much straight men can complain about like completely irrelevant things. It's just like I had like built the entire experience up in my mind as this sort of like test of grit, but they are just like complaining about the different brands of cheese that are available in the cafeteria. It's just like, oh my god. Also, I guess like I was sort of into like the endurance part of sports already, despite having like no experience whatsoever. So I've always loved the type of situations where I'm sort of pushed to my limits, and I guess I hope that I had like kind of sought out more of that in the army. By the way, tired Finnish dad, did your kid win this fight in like wanting to watch the hockey match late at night the last time that he was advocating for it? Because I think they won, which is like pretty rare to ever happen. Tired Finnish Dad is saying it gives some sort of perspective on life, and also people from other countries often think the service is somehow glamorous or brutal. Mostly it's totally different. Yeah, I think it's quite... There's so much of it that a lot of it is just routine. Routine set by others, not you. So there's a lot of like just nothing happening, or you're hustling to wait something to happen for hours. That's also an army thing. I remember that we also ran a Cooper test, the test of running where you run for 12 minutes as far as humanly possible. And when it was a test day for that, I remember that it was a full-on blizzard. So the test track that we were running around, we were basically all just like wading like in knee-deep snow. So, I remember thinking like, what does this actually measure? Since like obviously these are pretty rare weather conditions to wade through snow to do this. This is a funny memory. How are we doing on time? I think I should be like doing some sort of like overall effects by now. Doesn't that sound like the forest temple in Ocarina of Time? Listen to it. I'm gonna shut up. God, I love this lighting effect. It's so good. Oh my god. Like my ego is just like expanding right now. Just because of this Gaussian blur. Yes. Yes. You know, like sometimes when colors are just right, it's just like, I'm having like a John Hamm moment here. Yes. Oh my god, it's so good. Finnish Dad is saying, we had some heavy rainfall before Cooper, and I remember 3 guys falling at the start line when time started in the mud. Oh, that's worse. Like, okay, like you win. That's worse than running in knee-deep snow. Isn't it like strange how life goes? That like I remember the only other time that I've done a Cooper test in life was when I was in school, and both times it just felt like this is actual like physical torture. Why would anybody ever want to do this? And now when I'm older, I'm kind of looking at my running times and thinking that like maybe I should do a Cooper test like right in the like the harder part of this marathon training block, just to see if I can improve my score for it. Like willingly putting yourself into that level of like just extreme pain. And like maybe everybody doesn't feel like doing this, but I just find something like so exciting about pushing myself that way. I really want to do more running events that like, I don't know, I just love that moment when you are in like somewhat safe zone of pain. I don't mean running with a broken leg or like causing permanent damage or anything. But time has already like made the memories of my last marathon here in Helsinki, like so good, like especially about the last 13 kilometers when I was just in like active, insane, screaming pain. And like that's the part of the run that I now remember, like, oh my god, that was so good. I wanna do it again. Like, what is actually wrong with me? I think Cooper's test is kind of like FTP test on the bike. It's never gonna be enjoyable when you do it. I think there's like one crazy part about my personality is that my head is so constantly like being filled with like all of these noises, like maybe it's ADHD or whatever, like something where I have huge amount of trouble focusing on just one thing consistently, unless it's a creative task that I'm actively doing. Like then I can just like get like insane super focus on it for so long that I don't even notice time passing by. But when I'm doing something like a hard run practice or running event, it just narrows down the entire like way of thinking into this like one single goal, and there's something so like soothing about having just one thing to think about for once in my life when there's so much of this sort of like random noise in my head all the time. I'm doing a texture by just filling this with noise. In big scale. Getting the turbulence down. Okay. And then doing a motion blur to this. I'm gonna do another one in the same direction, just so that it's a more consistent direction. And then I'm setting this as a clipping mask here in lighten mode, lighter color actually, and then going into curves, making sure that those parts that I just added are visible. cranking down the red and then green. So now I have this sort of consistent texture. Adding slightly more motion blur to it. Back to curves, making sure that the light parts are actually peeking through. This can look like overdone, as I can easily go back in and then just crank down the opacity of this entire layer. The opacity of the layer reacts differently than the opacity of the lighten mode lighten. Let's add some leaves flying in the wind because of sprinkles. And because I can. Now that all of these dots are here, I'm gonna go into warp and then kind of like shape the wind. This way, all of those random dots that I just added, now they have like a consistent direction that unifies all of them. I'm just gonna duplicate this and then in freeform scale this down and put it up here to give a sense of like scale and distance to the same thing happening in distance in smaller scale. In the cleanup, I have so much work to do here. I'm trying to make this into more cohesive part of the entire painting. Did I just hear the producer flap her ears? Very possible. She's been getting a lot of attention today. And she demands it. Like, I don't know how we could deal with having 2 dogs. Because, like, Vivi requires so much attention. Maybe having like 2 corgis would be too much. Are there any like low maintenance dogs that are not that don't have that same sort of like diva level presence as corgis do? uh, Finnish dad is saying, I always hated the Cooper test. Give me an obstacle course, heavy stuff to carry, or anything else. Only time I like it was when after AUK when I actually was fit. Now I'm just too tired. Okay. Maybe it's like dangerous to have your name as tired Finnish dad, because like then you sort of imbue it as like part of your personality. I know the irony that like I shouldn't be the one talking since I'm angry Mikko. Yeah, so maybe that's just BS. Use whatever name you want. I guess the bigger thing that affects your identity is the way that you talk about yourself. Try to be kind to yourself. It's always worth it. We have reached 3 hours, but I'm just gonna do like few little like specks of light. I don't know if they're gonna work. I'm just gonna do them on top of everything. But I just wanna know if this light can hit the base of this column. It's just at the edge. I don't know, maybe it's too much. Sometimes it's hard to fight against the urge to explain everything. Truth teller saying the only things that help with ADHD and extensive thoughts and hard time to focus is working out, eating healthy, and the most important, to work on our feelings and overall growth. Yeah, I hope that I can do all of those things, but I'm not perfect. I have plenty of moments when I fail on all of those things. We had a weenie dog. Somehow I believe I can relate to the diva stuff. Yes. I think Maoris dogs, they are pretty sassy as well. Own it, being tired. Yeah. And thank you for the kind words. I think we have come to the end of this live stream. I'm just gonna do like one tiny little bit tweak. I just want like the entire light to glow a little bit everywhere, so I'm gonna do a add copy canvas, paste. Now on this copied canvas, I'm gonna do like a very large Gaussian blur. Just kind of mush everything together into these like light color areas. And now I'm gonna turn this into an overlay layer. And instead of leaving it like this, I'm gonna go into curves. First, crank up the darks so that we don't hide the shadows. And bring down the light areas as well. Now in the light areas, I'm just gonna push some of these highlights more towards warm. And because, remember, this was just like an overall blob type of effect, it's just gonna make the light glow a little bit. You can leave this at low opacity. It's just like a subtle way to push the colors more. I'm gonna make sure that the lights are bright enough. There's a weird light part of the wall up there. I'm just gonna fix that later. And I guess you just have to take my word for it. I always publish my art on my Instagram, so if you want to see the finished piece when it's all cleaned up, you can do so there. Wear it like armor. Yes. I shall remain as Angry Mikko, and you will be the tired finished ad. Thank you guys for coming to this live stream, And if you have any ideas for what the next video should be about, let me know in the comments. And I will try to make something useful. I'm really happy with this painting. I think it has interesting mood. I don't know if the rainbow makes it gay enough, but I tried. Okay. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye. I'm always waving, so I know when the stream has caught up with myself. Okay, bye.